The 2018 heroes performed a wide array of feats, rescuing residents on their routes from fires or crimes, stopping a runaway Jeep, using their foreign language knowledge to save folks, and helping the elderly with medical issues. And while their actions differed, they stem from the same factors that I think we're all familiar with, which is the knowledge of the neighborhood, commitment of the well-being of the residents, awareness of the surroundings, and a readiness to act when necessary, whatever the dangers might be. Every day, letter carriers help people who need help, sometimes at great personal risk. Maybe they spot warning signs that an elderly person is in distress. They investigate and they act quickly. Perhaps they pull a child from a car wreck, or they improve the quality of life of someone on their route. I mentioned that sometimes letter carriers act as individuals and sometimes as a team. Well, I've rarely seen more teamwork than in this instance, which involved a city carrier assistant, or CCA, 2 career carriers, an active carrier, and 2 retired carriers, and 3 different branches. On May 23rd of last year, their paths converged on a cul-de-sac in Harrison Township in Greater Detroit. Steve, who put in 36 years delivering the mail and now is a branch trustee, had just returned home from helping put out the branch's monthly newsletter. As he pulled into his driveway, he stopped to pick up his mail. And his neighbors, Joe and his wife, Michelle, were out enjoying a bike ride, and they stopped to speak with him. Dennis, a CCA of 3 years, he passed the retirees as he worked his route before noticing customer Fred Baker lying on his driveway. And Dennis says that he assumed the resident was working on his car, but as he got closer, he could hear the 81-year-old man calling for help. The CCA immediately alerted Steve and the Pamontes, and the group sprang into action. While Dennis called 911, Joseph provided first aid to the resident, who was bleeding from a gash on his head, and Steve went home to get towels to help staunch the flow. Denham then put the 911 operator on speakerphone so that Joseph could follow directions on administering aid. Joseph asked Fred Baker one question after another to keep him from losing consciousness. And fortunately, he remained aware, though barely, until the ambulance arrived about 10 minutes later. After the EMTs arrived, stabilized Fred Baker, and left for the hospital, Steve noticed that the resident's keys and wallet were still in the driveway. And by this time, Steve's wife, Linda, herself a retired letter carrier, had arrived on the scene. She called the injured man's daughter, whose number was on an emergency contact list in Fred's wallet. Over the phone, the daughter gave the group permission to retrieve her father's dog from the house. The letter carriers then cleaned the blood from the driveway and secured the man's belongings. The resident had apparently fallen in his driveway a half hour earlier and hit his head on the concrete, been laying there bleeding since. He received stitches, and after leaving the hospital, he went to a rehab facility. And as Branch 654 President Blaze put it, this is a very unique situation where 2 different generations of letter carriers work together. In this case, they worked together to save a human life. And in bestowing NALC's 2018 Unit Citation Award on these 3 carriers, the Heroes of the Year judges cited their teamwork and their eagerness to extend themselves. What an outstanding team effort demonstrated by active and retired letter carriers, they said, adding they were coming together to help their community. Steve who enjoyed his job so much that for the past 3 years he's worked in his local post office in December as a holiday CCA, deflected any praise. He credited Dennis, saying, "I thought the biggest thing was that a CCA did this." Please join me in congratulating Dennis, Steve, and Joseph for their teamwork, compassion, willingness to help, and for receiving the 2018 Unit Citation Award. Let me give you your stuff. Who's first? Dennis. You going first?
How everybody's doing? Just want to thank you all for being here to support me on this award. And I want to thank Steve and Joe for being there to assist me as we help Fred. And I'm going to pass the mic to Steve.
Go ahead, Joe.
Good afternoon. I also would like to thank everybody for being here, and I am very honored to receive this. It's not something I actually looked forward to. I spent 32 years flying under the radar for the post office, and then all of a sudden I got this notoriety that I didn't expect. But I am very grateful for this award, and I'm very grateful for all that has been done for us throughout this whole week. Thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody present. I also, after this happened, just as Fred said, letter carriers don't usually ask for recognition. I knew Dennis wasn't going to tell anybody, so I called up Clarence and I said, "You need to put Dennis in for the heroes thing." I didn't want him to put me and Joe in, but he did, because we just helped. But this week has been tremendous, and I'd like to thank the NALC for all they've done for us and for all of you attending and honoring us today. Thank you.
And I think your president said it best. You do more than deliver mail. You represent the Postal Service. You care about your community. You live in these communities. And your selfless acts, your humanitarian efforts, deserve this recognition. So I want to thank you on behalf of the Postal Service for your contributions to our society, to your neighbor. Know that you make a difference.